The schoolyard buzzed with life as students hurried to their lockers, laughing and chatting about the latest trends. Among them was Ethan, a skinny boy with messy hair and a backpack so worn it seemed to carry the weight of his world. He kept his head down, clutching his books tightly, hoping to slip past unnoticed. But in this school, the rich ruled and Ethan was an easy target. "Hey look, it's the janitor's kid." A voice jeered, loud enough to silence the bustling hallway. Ethan froze. His stomach churned as he recognized the voice. Jake, the school's most popular and cruelest boy. Jake strutted forward, flanked by his posse of followers, each grinning maliciously. "What's in the bag, Ethan?" "Old sandwiches. Hand-me-down homework." Jake sneered, snatching Ethan's backpack before he could react. The books spilled onto the floor, revealing a patched-up notebook and a pencil stub. The crowd erupted in laughter. Ethan bent down quickly, trying to gather his belongings, but Jake's shiny leather shoe slammed down on his notebook. "Oops," Jake said with mock sympathy. "Did I ruin your precious notes? Must be hard studying when your dad's scrubbing toilets for a living." Heat rose to Ethan's cheeks, but he stayed silent. He had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. His father's job as the school janitor was a constant source of mockery. The students saw it as a reflection of Ethan's worth, not understanding the sacrifices his father made to provide for him. "Leave him alone, Jake," a girl's voice broke in. It was Mia, the only person who had ever been kind to Ethan. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing with anger. "Why should I?" Jake retorted, smirking. "What, you feeling sorry for him? Don't waste your time, Mia. He'll never amount to anything." Mia glared at him but didn't reply. Jake turned back to Ethan. "Here," he said, picking up the notebook. For a brief moment, Ethan thought Jake might actually return it. Instead, Jake tossed it into a nearby trash can. "Trash belongs with trash," Jake declared, earning another round of laughter. Ethan's hands trembled as he retrieved his notebook from the bin, ignoring the stares and whispers around him. His vision blurred with unshed tears, but he refused to cry. Not here, not in front of them. The humiliation didn't end there. Later that afternoon, during the school's annual fundraiser assembly, Ethan was called on stage to present his project. It was a moment he had dreaded all week. Unlike the other students, who showcased flashy presentations funded by their wealthy parents, Ethan had pieced his together with scraps, cardboard, markers, and sheer determination. The room erupted in whispers and snickers as he walked onto the stage. Ethan's voice wavered as he began explaining his project, a model of a wind turbine made from recycled materials. "Seriously? Did he pull that out of a dumpster?" someone shouted. The crowd roared with laughter. Ethan's face burned. He tried to focus, to push through, but the jeers grew louder. Then, the unthinkable happened. Jake, sitting in the front row, grabbed a crumpled piece of paper and tossed it onto the stage. Others followed suit, pelting Ethan with wads of paper and candy wrappers. The teachers, overwhelmed by the chaos, did nothing to stop it. Ethan stood frozen, gripping his flimsy model, his knuckles white. He wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground and never come back. Tears threatened to spill, but he clenched his jaw, swallowing the lump in his throat. He had to finish. He had to show them he was more than their mockery. "That's enough," a voice boomed. The principal stepped forward, silencing the crowd. But the damage was done. Ethan's presentation was in shambles, his dignity shattered. As he walked off the stage, the mocking whispers followed him. He made his way to the janitor's closet, where his father was mopping the floors. Seeing Ethan's tear-streaked face, his father put down the mop and pulled him into a tight embrace. "It's okay, son," he said softly. "They don't see what I see in you, but one day they will." That night, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling of their tiny apartment, his father's words echoed in his mind. He clenched his fists, a fire igniting in his chest. "One day," he whispered to himself. "One day they'll see who I really am." It was the beginning of a resolve that would change Ethan's life forever. The sun peeked through the thin curtains of Ethan's bedroom, casting faint beams on the walls plastered with makeshift posters of dreams he had yet to realize. His alarm clock buzzed, but he was already awake, his mind replaying the events of the previous day. Despite the humiliation, there was a flicker of determination within him, a quiet voice reminding him to hold on. Ethan left the house early, hoping to avoid Jake and his crew. The walk to school was long but familiar, weaving through narrow streets lined with small shops and houses that had seen better days. As he passed the local library, he felt the pull of its comforting silence, but there wasn't time to stop. Not today. The day dragged on, filled with the usual stares and whispers. But something unusual happened during lunch. As Ethan sat alone at a corner table, picking at the sandwich his father had packed, an unfamiliar figure approached. The man was middle-aged, dressed in a simple suit, with kind eyes that seemed to see right through the walls Ethan had built around himself. "Mind if I sit here?" the man asked, his voice calm but firm. Ethan hesitated but nodded. No one ever chose to sit with him, let alone an adult he didn't recognize. "I'm Mr. Carter," the man introduced himself, extending a hand. Ethan shook it cautiously. "I'm new to the school, a substitute teacher for the week. I saw your presentation yesterday." Ethan's heart sank. He stared at his sandwich, bracing himself for more ridicule. But instead, Mr. Carter's tone softened. "It was impressive," he said. "Do you know how many students your age would even think about renewable energy, let alone build a working model? You have talent, Ethan. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Ethan looked up, surprised. Compliments were rare in his life, especially from adults. He didn't know how to respond. "It's not much," Ethan mumbled. "Just some cardboard and old parts." "It's more than that," Mr. Carter insisted. "It's innovation, it's resilience, and it's the start of something bigger, if you let it be." For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt seen, truly seen. They spent the rest of lunch talking, with Mr. Carter asking questions about Ethan's interests and dreams. By the time the bell rang, Ethan felt a spark of hope he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few days, Mr. Carter became a regular presence in Ethan's life. He introduced Ethan to new books, websites, and ideas, encouraging him to think beyond the small town and the limitations placed on him. "The world is bigger than this school, Ethan," he said one afternoon. "And you're bigger than their words. Keep pushing. Keep dreaming." Ethan clung to those words like a lifeline. He began spending more time at the library, devouring books on engineering, business, and innovation. The mockery at school didn't stop, but Ethan found it easier to bear. For the first time, he had a vision of a future where he wasn't defined by his poverty or the cruelty of others. But Mr. Carter's time at the school was temporary, and when the week ended, Ethan felt the familiar ache of loss. On his last day, Mr. Carter handed Ethan a small, wrapped package. "Open it when you're ready," he said with a smile. "And remember, the journey is just beginning." That night, Ethan unwrapped the package to find a sleek, leather-bound notebook. Inside the front cover was a note. "Dream big, Ethan. The world is waiting for you." Ethan clutched the notebook to his chest, tears streaming down his face. He didn't know how, but he vowed to honor those words. One day, he would prove to himself and to everyone else that he was worth more than their mockery. With Mr. Carter gone, Ethan's routine shifted, but the impact of their conversations lingered. The notebook became his sanctuary, its pages filled with sketches of wind turbines, ideas for inventions, and plans for a future he could barely imagine. He spent hours at the library, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. One afternoon, as he was deep in a book about engineering, the librarian approached him with a warm smile. "You've been coming here a lot," she said. "There's a scholarship program I think you should apply for. It's for students with innovative ideas." Ethan's eyes widened. A scholarship. It felt out of reach, like a dream he wasn't allowed to have. But the librarian handed him the form and said, "Think about it. You have something special, Ethan. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, Ethan stared at the application form, doubt gnawing at him. What if he wasn't good enough? What if they laughed at his submission, just like everyone else had? But then he opened the notebook and reread Mr. Carter's words, "Dream big, Ethan. The world is waiting for you." With a deep breath, he picked up his pen and began to write. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to dream without limits. The morning air was crisp as Ethan stood on the platform, clutching a tattered suitcase and the letter that had changed his life. The scholarship committee had not only accepted his application but awarded him full tuition to a prestigious academy focused on renewable energy innovation. The news had stunned him, his father, and even the librarian who had encouraged him to apply. The train roared into the station, its sound a mix of promise and finality. Ethan's father stood beside him, pride and worry etched into his weathered face. "This is your chance, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Don't look back. Go show them who you are." Ethan hugged his father tightly, blinking back tears. He had never been away from home, let alone travel to a big city. The thought both excited and terrified him. As the train doors opened, he took a deep breath and stepped aboard, waving to his father until the platform disappeared from view. The journey was long, giving Ethan plenty of time to think. The rolling countryside gave way to towering skyscrapers, each one a testament to human ambition. By the time he arrived at the academy, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the sleek buildings and sprawling campus. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Ethan threw himself into his studies, surrounded by peers who shared his passion for innovation. For the first time, he wasn't the odd one out. His professors recognized his talent, often praising his unique ideas and work ethic. But it wasn't easy. Ethan struggled to adapt to the fast-paced environment and the lingering self-doubt that told him he didn't belong. He called his father often, their conversations a lifeline. "You're doing great, Ethan," his father would say. "Remember, every step forward is a step closer to your dream." One evening, as Ethan worked late in the lab, a professor approached him with a proposal. "Ethan, we're forming a team to compete in an international renewable energy competition," she said. "Your turbine design has potential. Would you like to join us?" Ethan's heart raced. This was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. He agreed, throwing himself into the project with everything he had. The team worked tirelessly, and Ethan's design became the centerpiece of their presentation. Months later, they stood on a stage much grander than the one back in high school. Ethan's hands shook as he explained their project to a panel of judges and an audience of thousands. But this time, there were no jeers, no mockery, only applause. When they announced his team as the winners, Ethan felt a surge of pride and validation he had never known. As he held the trophy high, he thought of his father, Mr. Carter, and everyone who had believed in him. This was just the beginning. Ethan's victory was a turning point, but it also marked the start of an uphill climb. As news of his success spread, opportunities poured in. Companies and investors reached out, intrigued by his innovative turbine design. For the first time, Ethan was experiencing the world beyond his small town, a world filled with possibilities, but also challenges he hadn't anticipated. The Academy offered him a chance to commercialize his invention through their startup incubator program. It was a dream come true, but it came with its own set of obstacles. Ethan was suddenly thrust into the world of business meetings, patent applications, and technical revisions, all while juggling his coursework. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were higher than ever. One evening, after hours of reviewing financial projections and design schematics, Ethan stared at his computer screen, feeling overwhelmed. Doubt crept in, whispering that he wasn't cut out for this. Memories of Jake's mocking voice echoed in his mind, threatening to unravel the confidence he had built. He picked up his notebook and flipped through its pages, now filled with diagrams and notes. At the very back, he found Mr. Carter's note, "Dream big, Ethan. The world is waiting for you." He took a deep breath and pushed forward, determined not to let fear dictate his future. Despite the challenges, Ethan found support in unexpected places. His professors offered guidance, and his teammates became a second family. They celebrated small victories together, from securing funding to successfully testing prototypes. Slowly but surely, Ethan began to believe in himself again. But the journey wasn't without setbacks. During a critical presentation to a panel of investors, a technical glitch derailed their demonstration. Ethan's heart sank as he saw skeptical looks among the audience. It felt like high school all over again, but this time he refused to crumble. He took a deep breath and improvised, explaining the core concept with such passion and clarity that the investors were won over. "You're a natural leader, Ethan," one of them said afterward. "Don't let setbacks stop you. They're just part of the process." Those words stayed with him. Each failure became a lesson, each obstacle a stepping stone. Ethan's persistence paid off when his turbine design was patented and licensed to a major energy company. The royalties ensured financial stability for the first time in his life, but more importantly, it was a validation of his hard work and resilience. Back in his hometown, word of Ethan's success began to spread. The boy who had been mocked and underestimated was now a symbol of hope and perseverance. Even Jake, who had once tormented him, couldn't ignore the change. He reached out to congratulate Ethan, though the words felt hollow. Ethan's father couldn't hide his pride. "I always knew you'd do something great," he said during one of their calls. "You've made me prouder than I can put into words." Ethan smiled, his eyes misting. "It's because of you, Dad. You never gave up on me." As Ethan stood on the balcony of his small apartment overlooking the city, he reflected on how far he had come. The journey wasn't over, but he was ready for whatever came next. The world had once seemed so vast and unwelcoming, But now it felt like it was his to Ethan's journey back to his hometown wasn't planned. It was an unexpected lull in his schedule that brought him there. With his invention thriving in the renewable energy market, Ethan found himself in a rare position. He had the time and means to visit his roots. The thought was both exciting and nerve-wracking. Would the place that once ridiculed him see him differently now? As his car rolled into the familiar streets of his old neighborhood, memories of simpler times, filled with hardship and quiet resilience, washed over him. He passed the library where he had spent countless hours dreaming, the small corner shop where his father sometimes treated him to ice cream, and the school that had been both a battleground and a place of growth. Ethan pulled up to his childhood home, its weathered exterior still a testament to his father's unyielding dedication. He stepped out of the car, taking in the sight of his father standing on the porch, a proud but restrained smile on his face. "Welcome home, son," his father said, his voice thick with emotion. Inside, the house felt smaller than Ethan remembered, but its warmth remained unchanged. As they sat at the kitchen table catching up, his father spoke of the town's reaction to Ethan's success. "They're proud of you, his father said, even the ones who doubted you." Ethan nodded, but doubt lingered. Had they truly changed? The next morning, Ethan decided to visit his old school. Walking through the gates brought back a flood of memories, both bitter and sweet. He found himself in the auditorium where he had been humiliated during the fundraiser. As he stood there, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Ethan." Turning, he saw a familiar face, Mia. She smiled, her expression warm and genuine. "I heard you were back. I always knew you'd make it," she said. They walked the halls together, reminiscing. Mia spoke of how things had changed, how even Jake, his old tormentor, had grown quieter over the years. "People learn," she said. "Some slower than others, but they do." Ethan's visit soon became the talk of the town. The school invited him to speak to the students, and though nervous, he agreed. Standing on the same stage where he had once been mocked, he now faced a crowd of eager young faces. He shared his story, not just the successes, but the struggles, the doubts, and the moments of near defeat. He spoke of resilience and the power of believing in oneself, even when no one else did. As the applause died down, Jake, now a teacher at the school, stood and approached the stage. "Ethan," Jake began, his voice hesitant but earnest. "I was wrong. About a lot of things. I'm sorry for how I treated you." The room fell silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. Ethan nodded, his own emotions conflicted. "Thank you," he said simply. The visit left Ethan reflective. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was freeing. The town that had once been a place of pain was now a testament to growth and change. As he drove away, Ethan realized his journey was no longer about proving others wrong, it was about continuing to prove himself right. The unexpected opportunity, Ethan's return to the city after visiting his hometown, but with success came new challenges. While his turbine project continued to thrive, he realized the broader impact he wanted to create. Instead of limiting himself to one invention, Ethan decided to explore ways to make renewable energy accessible to underserved communities, including the one he grew up in. One day, he received an invitation to attend an international summit on renewable energy innovation. Leaders, investors, and visionaries from around the world would be there, and the keynote speaker had cancelled at the last moment. They wanted Ethan to take the spot. At first, he hesitated. Standing in front of a global audience felt daunting. Memories of the humiliation from his high school presentation resurfaced, but he knew this was a chance to not only showcase his work but also inspire others. On the day of the summit, Ethan stepped onto the massive stage, his heart pounding. But as he began speaking, the fear melted away. He shared his journey from being the janitor's son mocked by peers to an innovator reshaping the energy industry. The audience was captivated, and by the time he finished, the applause was thunderous. Ethan left the stage feeling invincible. He had finally transformed the pain of his past into a source of strength. Inspired by his speech and the connections he made at the summit, Ethan launched a new initiative, a non-profit organization dedicated to bringing affordable renewable energy solutions to impoverished areas. He named it the Carter Initiative, after the teacher who had first seen his potential. The initiative gained traction quickly, attracting support from governments, NGOs, and philanthropists. Ethan worked tirelessly, overseeing projects in rural areas, building solar farms, and installing wind turbines in schools and community centers. One of the first locations they transformed was his hometown. The library where he had once dreamed was now fully powered by clean energy, and local families no longer had to worry about power outages. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ethan's father stood by his side, tears streaming down his face. "You've done more than I ever imagined, son," he said. "You've given this town hope." But the most surprising moment came when Jake, his former bully, approached him. "I want to help," Jake said earnestly. "I've been teaching kids here, and they look up to you. I think we can do more for them together." Though hesitant, Ethan saw the sincerity in Jake's eyes. It wasn't just about forgiveness, it was about creating a better future. Years later, Ethan sat in a quiet corner of the library in his hometown, reflecting on the journey that had brought him full circle. The once bullied boy was now a global name in renewable energy, but more importantly, he had built a legacy of impact and empowerment. The library's walls were adorned with photos of Ethan's projects, a testament to what resilience and determination could achieve. Children laughed and played in the library's new learning center, powered by the very ideas Ethan had once sketched in his notebook. Mia, now a close friend and advisor to the Carter Initiative, walked in and handed him a folder. "Here's the proposal for the next project," she said. "Another school, another community that needs hope." Ethan smiled, flipping through the pages. The work never ended, but that was the beauty of it. As he walked outside, he spotted his father talking to a group of children, proudly telling them about the son who had once walked these streets. Ethan watched, his heart swelling with gratitude and pride. Later that night, he stood on the balcony of his home, looking out at the horizon. The world no longer felt vast and intimidating. It felt like a canvas, waiting for his next stroke of brilliance. Ethan opened his leather-bound notebook, now nearly full, and wrote the words that had defined his life. With that, he closed the book, ready for the next chapter of his life.